Welcome back to Demon of the Week, and we're going to start with the whole new section of this. We've been through the Goetia, or the Goetia. So we're going to start with have a look at all the other demons. And today we're going to start with Leviathan. Welcome to my channel. You are entering the world of magic and mysticism with your host, Lee W. Johnson. Keep the lights on and help improve the channel by becoming a supporter for just $2.99 per month. Hit the join button. Okay, Leviathan. What I was going to do was go through the 9 demonic divinities and then go through other sets of corresponding demons and things like that. But what I have decided to do is, in the same vein, I have done Lucifer, which was last week. I have done previously in the Goetia series, I've done Flerius, and I've done Belial, and Amdusia. So there were some that were covered within the 9 demonic divinities, but the next one is therefore, so we've done Lucifer, done Flerius, next one is Leviathan in the west. And what I'm going to do is, I'm going to carry on with that, so we'll do Leviathan, but I'm going to break slightly away from continuing with the 9 demonic divinities and cover the other 2 primordial beings that are connected with Leviathan, which is Behemoth and Ziz. Then what I'm going to do, we have done Belial, so then I'm going to come back round to Unsere, which is one of the other 9 demonic divinities, and there's going to be a good reason for that, but you'll find out in a few weeks' time. Alright, so we're going to look at these 3 beings, and they are very interesting, Leviathan, Behemoth, and Ziz, because they are primordial monsters or primordial beings, spirits. Some cases, some people call them primeval, chaos monsters or abyssal monsters, but they actually relate to water, land, and sky or air. I'm going to get into Behemoth and Ziz a bit later, but I want to cover Leviathan today. Just to give you a bit of background, this becomes very interesting because we can actually view this in terms of being the world tree, the upper, middle, and lower worlds, and things like that. So there's a lot of connections we can make in that regard to the world tree or the Axis Mundi. Keep that in mind. We could also relate these 3 to the Greek Chaos, Gaia, and Tartarus. So, there's a lot of overlaps that start coming in here. But anyway, let's go through Leviathan, and as I said, we'll cover other stuff in the coming weeks. And I got my new notebook. This is my new notebook. That's Leviathan. So, yeah, lots to cover. Right, I'm trying to remember where I was going to start with this. Okay, so let's start with correspondence stuff. It's not going to be the same list of correspondences as we did with the Goetia. That was very set. It had the planet, the metal, the incense, the plant, the tarot card, the zodiac, etc., etc., etc. But this is going to be a bit more jumpy, but as many correspondences as I can find from other people, and any personal gnosis that I find or have regarding these spirits myself. So the N is Jaden Tassa Hoet Naka Leviathan. Colors, any color that reminds you of the sea, really. There was a whole list of colors, but really they just relate to colors of the sea. So aquamarine, green, blue, some purples and things like that. If it reminds you of the sea, great color to use. Offerings in regards to incense would be sandalwood, copal, lotus, eucalyptus, mint, lavender, or palo santo. That comes mostly from Satan and Sons. Again, anything associated with water, sea, and anything around that, including sand, shells, river rocks. Remember, Leviathan isn't just a sea monster and related just to the sea, but all bodies of water. Okay, so river rocks also. Planets, this starts to differ. Satan and Sons mention Neptune, Motorwake mentions Jupiter. I am inclined to go with Jupiter when it comes to the planet, mostly because of, Jupiter being one of the seven celestial bodies of the medieval magic workings and things like that. So it fits in nicely with certain formats, ritual formats and such things. Metal is listed as platinum, element water, and direction is west. All right, so then I'm going to go up here. I really scribbled notes all over the place here. Okay, so in reference to Leviathan, call to work with emotional balance. Oh, this was my own personal gnosis. So I find it's great, not just my own personal gnosis, a lot of people will refer to the same things, but work with Leviathan when you need emotional balancing. Excellent, fantastic spirit to work with for such things. And you'll find that Leviathan kind of washes you with his dark waters, and that washing doesn't just bring emotional balance, and it also brings cleansing, purification. But what happens is, in terms of the emotional balancing here, what you'll find is that you become balanced. You don't get rid of the emotions, you don't wash them away. You become balanced in such a manner that you still have the emotions, but you're able to manage them, handle them, and understand them, understand the processes that you are going through, because we fluctuate, our emotions fluctuate all the time, and there are reasons for that. What's causing it? How does it feel? What are the other emotions that are influencing that particular emotion? Because we don't just feel one emotion at one particular time. So that balancing of emotions and bringing that understanding is excellent in this regard. And not just when you are feeling anxious or anything like that and you need that emotional balancing, but also I found personally that Leviathan is brilliant to work with when someone is grieving the loss of a loved one, and this is the death of a loved one. It's not the loss of a friend or something like that, but could help with that as well. But my own personal experience, when it comes to the loss of a loved one and person going through the grieving process, and it can be distraught, it can be traumatic, Leviathan brings again that emotional balancing. And what I've found is that this causes the person to be able to understand the processes that they're going through the grieving, and also the process of life and death that their loved one has gone through. And it allows that process to become or easier to actually manage, easier to navigate through. But it doesn't remove the experience, and that's very important. I mean, part of the grieving process is to actually experience the grief. So I find Leviathan to be fantastic for all of those things. All right, now I'm going to go through all of these notes, so be prepared for some reading. Just make sure I know where I'm going next. All right, so this one's next. In demonolatry, the elemental king of water, noted in demonolatry as well as Leviathan Satanism, and probably has its roots in sacred magic of Abramelin the Mage. In the Abramelin book, Sacred Magic of Abramelin the Mage, Leviathan is listed as one of the four princes. Four princes of the demons. It's Leviathan, Satan, Belial, and Lucifer, if I remember correctly. So, that is found in Sacred Magic of Abramelin the Mage, and Leviathan is usually considered to be that elemental king of water in the West, in the watery aspect. Over here, let's start to go back over here. Oh, yes, another thing, we're going to get to Unsere or Unsere, depending on how you pronounce it. We'll discuss the pronunciation then. That's going to be in a few weeks' time. He is said to be, or his wife is Unsere, which is possibly the feminine Leviathan from the Hebrew texts, and we're going to find out about that now. All right, so starting from the beginning of the notes and not jumping around so much. is referenced several times in books of the Hebrew Bible and is noted as a sea serpent in theology and mythology. Is often considered the embodiment of chaos. In the Ophite sect of Gnosticism, he encapsulates the space of the material world. Take note of that. It's a very important part of Leviathan's mythology, I think. Personally, is that encapsulation of the space of the material world. As we continue, we'll get more into that. And I also did a video. It wasn't a Demon of the Week, it was a Monday Musings one, comparing Leviathan with Varuna. So I actually mentioned some of that in there as well, so I'm going to have a look for that one. There are many parallels to other such beings. The Canaanite Lotan, who was defeated by the god Baal Hadad, the Mesopotamian Tiamat, which is defeated by Marduk, and Vertra being slayed by Indra, and Jormungandr and the relationship with Thor. So you have this relationship of a sea monster or a large world serpent, and some being, person, character, personality who defeats the world serpent. And there's a lot of mythology, mystery-based stuff in that as well, and how you view it. These parallels speak of a draconic and serpentine comparison, or referring to the world serpent that envelops, encapsulates, or covers the earth. Although Leviathan is referred to as a sea monster or sea serpent, I personally believe that the sea is actually in reference to the atmosphere, the space which envelops the earth. As I said, that whole encapsulation of the material world. When we get later into Ziz is the monster or the primordial being which actually it covers the air space. So you're going to have to stretch your imagination slightly. Try not to think too literally in these regards, especially when we come to the three, because we have the land, sea, and the sky. Land, sea, and sky. So sea part would be Leviathan, but that sea is not just the bodies of water on the actual planet on Earth. It's also that watery aspect which surrounds the world. It's the atmosphere, and this becomes a very protective aspect because that protects us from the elements, from the sun, getting direct ultraviolet rays and such things from the sun. Somebody who's more into science and stuff can correct me on any of this. But the atmosphere protects us from all of those things, and if that atmosphere wasn't there, the earth would burn up. We would die. Okay, so Leviathan in that regard becomes a very protective aspect, as the world serpent. Where am I now? If the world serpent were to release its own tail, because the world serpent is seen as the Ouroboros, the serpent which has its own tail in its mouth. So if it were to release its tail, it would then, if you were to think of it eating its own tail and then it releases, it falls to pieces, the atmosphere opens up, burning the earth. Okay, so that would actually be the end times, to be quite honest. Let's see, the slaying or destruction of the serpent by the hero is symbolic. There is some speculation, when it comes to the draconic or the serpentine figures within mythology and the hero slaying the dragon. It's sometimes actually considered to be the dragon or the serpent as being a phallic symbol, and the slaying of the dragon becomes the fall of the patriarchy type of thing. But in this regard, I definitely wouldn't place that in the same arena. But in the case of the world serpent covering the earth as the protective atmosphere in the sea of space, is the ascension of the soul to the higher realms. So what you find is personal gnosis completely here. So you have this world serpent which is encapsulated in the material world. all right? And if you wish to ascend beyond the material, then you would need to, the serpent would need to release its own tail to allow you to pass through. So it becomes symbolic in that fashion of, it's a bit like breaking through the throat chakra if you're doing Kundalini work, or in Kabbalistic terms, in the Tree of Life, the Etz Chaim, you would pass through or pass across the abyss, the sphere of Da'at, in order to get to the supernal realms. So, all of these symbolic representations of a kind of ascension. But now also bear in mind that this is only one beast. This is only one primordial being. There are three, and therefore working with all three actually brings everything into equilibrium. So even though we are thinking of this ascension as coming from the material world, breaking through into the spiritual world, the upper world, whatever we want to call it, it then becomes an aspect of also incorporating Behemoth and Ziz into this whole thing. So we have the material world, we have the space between, and then we have the chaos, the abyssal space, which then becomes the underworld. So, we consider the underworld to be in the earth, under the surface of things. But when we are thinking of this is why I said don't think too literally about these things. When we're thinking about this, the sea aspect, which is encapsulating the material realm, then becomes the underworld. So we pass through the skin into the underworld, and up, down, above, below, etc., 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 and all that stuff. All right, let's carry on because there's a lot to go through in this one. So look, another symbolism we find here is the defeat of the serpent, then becoming the actual heavens and earth. After the serpent is slayed, such as with Tiamat and Marduk, the serpent goddess or goddess's body becomes the heavens. This is in that mythology. So as soon as the hero defeats the serpentine being, the goddess, in this case Tiamat, then the body becomes the heavens and the earth. All right. So again, lots of symbolism. This is the creation of the sea of space, cycles within cycles. I also wrote over here, Jormungandr is slain during Ragnarok. Here it is mentioned that he covers the earth, Midgard, dwelling in the world sea. And the world sea in this case is the space beyond Midgard, covering the physical realm. In Judaism, there is mention of Leviathan being female, but also that there was a male and a female Leviathan created. And this is why I mentioned earlier, in some people's gnosis, and this is part of my own personal gnosis as well, is that Unsere is actually Leviathan's wife. And this ties in nicely with this, mention in Judaism of there once being a male and female Leviathan. This is what was created. But to avoid them procreating, God then slayed the female Leviathan, reserving the flesh for the righteous during the banquet on the advent of the Messiah. So there is this, after Messiah comes and everybody goes to wherever it is, and the righteous and the pious are given a great feast, and it's said that we'll feast on the flesh of Leviathan and Behemoth, and in some cases mentioned also Ziz. In this particular tale, it is that the female Leviathan has already been destroyed and has been salted and is being prepared and is ready for that day. Was it the eshalotic? I've forgotten the word. Eshalotic or something feast that takes place. Anyway, so that's one particular story, tale, myth within the Jewish faith. It is also mentioned that this meal will contain the flesh of Leviathan and Behemoth. Yeah, okay. Lots Lots to take from the Jewish faith. One interesting one. Oh yeah, there is lots to take. If you actually go and study Leviathan, particularly when it comes to mentioning the Jewish text, a Hebrew text, there is a lot to go through. A shitload. But one interesting one that comes from Rabbi Eliezer during a voyage with Rabbi Joshua explained that Leviathan's body, especially his eyes, possess great illuminating power. This is mentioned because Rabbi Joshua has become frightened, or had become frightened, by the sudden appearance of a brilliant light. He referred to Job 41, verse 18, by his I think that's Niesings. A light doth shine, and his eyes are like the eyelids of the morning. And I found this interesting because it kind of brings up the imagery of the morning star, the light bringer. So could Leviathan be considered a light bringer? Quite possibly. Why not? It's just one reference, but it's interesting, something interesting to consider. And lastly, in the Zohar, the mention of the eating of the flesh of Leviathan at the end of days is actually a metaphor for enlightenment. So that also comes into it. So it's not just that story about Rabbi Joshua becoming frightened by this sudden appearance of light, but also mentioned in the Zohar that particular eating of Leviathan's flesh is a metaphor for enlightenment itself. Sorry, I did do a side note over here. Like the sea can be calm, but also tumultuous in an instant, can reach into the dark depths of self to use that energy. Oh yeah, so in regards to Leviathan being, now my own personal gnosis comes in. So I see my experiences with the Leviathan, the two particular incidents which are worth mentioning. One, generally, is that Leviathan is very much like the Emperor card from the tarot. So this old man who is very gentle, who loves his children, who guides in a gentle manner, has a gentle hand and things like that, but is also very strict, won't take any shit from anybody, but does it all in a gentle manner. However, we have the aspect of the sea monster, and the sea monster is the tumultuous sea. So we have the calm waters, but we also have the tumultuous sea, which they can change in an instant. And this also brings to mind the idea that although we have those calming waters which can help with healing grief, emotional balancing, and all such things, we can also reach deeper down inside us to that tumultuous sea-like, that very violent dark waters, which we can then reach down into, pull out and use in a very particular manner. So you can use that energy, and that energy within the dark depths of the self can be quite painful, actually. So you have that balance and aspect again. It's great to use for healing, but also you can use that dark energy within yourself for baneful magic. All right, and the other thing, the other personal gnosis part. I did a particular thing where I go through my astral temple through a particular door to speak with particular spirits. I'll usually draw their sigil on the door, then when it starts shining, it then opens and I step through into like a blank void space, and then the scene sort of passes by and becomes real. Depending on the spirit, it's always different. When I did this particular journey with for Leviathan, to speak to Leviathan, I found myself on a beach. It was nighttime. I was on this beach. The sea was in front of me, and I had to dive into the sea and swim down, deep down. So I did this, and I was swimming down, and then deep down in the sea, there was a mountain, and in this mountain was an opening. So I swam into the opening, and then I came out into like a cavern. So it was a cavernous space, and even though I was down in the waters, in the sea itself, it became this underworld space, because there was light, there was sun, there was beach sand, and there was water. But it came through this hole in the mountain, which was deep down in the earth. Anyway, so came out, stepped onto the beach, and waited there for a little while. And then Leviathan came out of the water, and he looked like a fish man. He was about 6 foot, humanoid shape, but he looked like a fish, and he was walking. So, you know, we have particular, I'll keep mentioning this about the spirits, we read about particular imagery of what other people see these spirits being, what they look like and things like that, but your own personal experience may be different, and because sometimes it is so different, you may start doubting yourself. Don't doubt yourself. That's your personal experience. That's how that spirit wants to present to you, and there's probably a particular reason for that, particular appearance or specific appearance. It may have something, there may be a message in it itself. So don't disregard seeing a spirit in a particular way, which is completely and utterly different to what everybody else says. It is a personal experience, it has to be, and therefore, you know, keep that in mind when you're working with the spirits. Okay, so that's Leviathan, and next week we're going to do Behemoth. Okay, so I'll see you then. Cheers for that. Bye bye.